You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's May the 18th, and welcome to the Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, your cannabis and psychedelic news source found here at paceradio.net, plus at cbgtv.com. Good morning, Glenn. How you doing?
I'm doing great today. I actually get to do the show today.
Yeah, you're sounding good. Let's just hope it keeps going through the rest of the broadcast.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm looking at the calendar, I'm looking at the date here. And I'm thinking, boy, you haven't got much time left down there. You'll be heading home soon, won't you?
Yeah, we have about 2 weeks left here. I think it's June 3rd. I'll be in New Brunswick.
Back in New Brunswick, eh? So you're heading back to the province of New Brunswick, and
we were trying Ontario and New Brunswick. It just wound up being New Brunswick.
Correct. Yeah. That's the nice thing about you had options. You had different places. You didn't have to specifically go to. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a lot in Ontario, and I would have liked to have been closer to them.
Yeah. Well, it's only a 12-hour drive, 13-hour drive.
Right around there.
Yeah, I know. Maybe to you and me it sounds long, but I know people who drive truck, like my brother. That's just a short drive down the highway.
Yeah, I think the problem now is with me, it's not so much the drive, it's the cost of the fuel now to go there.
Oh, yeah.
And everything associated with it, restaurants and a hotel if you need one, and it just gets very, very expensive.
Yeah, I can see that being an issue. Here, let me get out of that sunshine. Nice to have some sunshine. All right, Glenn. Well, it's good to be able to communicate with you. But what do you say? We get going. Our first story started of the day.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. Headline says for marijuana moment: marijuana is associated with significant and sustained health improvements, according to the American Medical Association.
The use of cannabis is associated with significant improvements in quality of life for people with conditions like chronic pain and insomnia, and those effects are largely sustained over time, according to a new study published by the American Medical Association. A researcher carried out a retrospective case series analysis that involved 3,148 people in Australia who were prescribed medical cannabis for treatment of certain eligible conditions.
For all 8 well-being indicators that were tested, cannabis appeared to help with adverse side effects that were rarely serious, according to the study published last week in the Journal of American Medical Association's Health Policy. Patients were asked to rate their wellness in 8 categories of a scale of 0 to 100 at different stages of treatment. Those categories were general health, bodily pain, physical functioning, physical role limitations, mental health, emotional role limitations, social functioning, and vitality.
And after administering the survey to the patients about once every 45 days for a total of 15 follow-ups, the study found that participants who were consuming cannabis reported average improvements of 6.6 to 8.31 points on a 100-point scale, depending on the category, so up to 18%. These findings suggest that medical cannabis treatment may be associated with improvements in health-related quality of life among patients with a range of health conditions. The researchers from the Swiss Swinburne University of Technology, University of Western Australia, and Austin Hospital wrote.
The most common conditions for which cannabis was prescribed were non-cancer chronic pain at 68.6%, cancer-related pain at 6%, insomnia at 4.8%, and anxiety at 4.2%. Now, according to the study, they say that the use of cannabis as a medicine is becoming increasingly prevalent. Given the diverse range of conditions being treated with medical cannabis, as well as the vast array of products and dose forms available, clinical evidence incorporating patient-reported outcomes may help determine safety and efficacy.
The doses, methods, and consumptions and cannabinoid profiles of cannabis products that patients used varied significantly. Even so, the estimated treatment effects were very similar. The researchers said that the retrospective case series analysis is limited by the fact that there was not a control, making it more difficult to generalize the results. Makes sense.
Yep. This study suggests a favorable association between medical cannabis treatment and quality of life among patients with a diverse range of conditions, it concludes. However, clinical evidence for cannabinoid efficacy remains limited, and further high-quality trials are required. This is just the latest in a long list of studies supporting the therapeutic potential of cannabis as more states and countries move to reform their cannabis laws.
For example, another study from the University of Colorado found that consistent cannabis use is associated with improved cognition and reduced pain among cancer patients and people receiving chemotherapy. A separate AMA study that was released earlier this year found that chronic pain patients who received medical cannabis for longer than a month saw significant reduction in prescribed opioids. That's what we
Big
want.
time. This is great coming out of the AMA.
Yeah.
AMA also published research late last year that connected state cannabis legalization with reduced opioid prescribing for certain cancer patients. Numerous studies have linked cannabis legalization and self-reported cannabis use to reduce opioid prescribing and overdose deaths.
State-level cannabis legalization is also associated with notable reduction in prescribing the specific opioid codeine. According to another recent study that leverages data from the Federal Drug Environment Administration. It sounds really good to me, and it sounds like the drug companies are going to be getting really pissed off really soon.
Yeah, that is all good news. There is no doubt about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's this is coming from the AMA. You would think that you might have been coming back with something else other than what they've but they found all those positives, which is
a few years ago they would never have even reported any positives.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's keep that positive flow going, and we're gonna do that with our next story. And this comes from Muggleheads. It says no significant increase in high risk use of cannabis after legalization, according to a study. And I'm sure we'll find that that's right here in Canada. There you go.
The legalization of cannabis in Canada has not led to an increase in problematic use overall, but marginalized groups remain at a higher risk, a new study suggests. The new study, led by researchers at the University of Waterloo, released on Monday, assessed the rates of high-risk cannabis use among people aged 16 to 65 in the years after legalization and found no evidence of a change in the proportion of those whose cannabis use would be classified as high risk.
Researchers found people in poorer neighborhoods and some racial minorities were slightly more likely to be moderate risk users. However, the differences were small and steady over time. There is no significant increase in high-risk use for any group. The risk of problematic cannabis use does not appear to have increased in the 2 years following cannabis legalization in Canada.
Disparities in problematic use persisted, with some racial minority and marginalized groups experiencing higher risks, reads the study by lead author Fatima Fattar. The study used national survey data from 35,000 Canadians aged 16 and older. Respondents reported frequency of use and symptoms of cannabis use disorder to determine risk levels. Moderate use was defined as weekly use with some symptoms of dependence, while high-risk use meant daily use with a cannabis use disorder.
The findings suggest Canada has not seen a major rise in cannabis misuse and addiction since the country legalized recreational cannabis. However, researchers call for continued monitoring to understand the public health impacts of legalization over the longer term. And I like that. I agree with that. It's not a problem there. They say that Canada's real world experience with marijuana legalization, much like the experiences in many U.S. states, affirms that these policies can be implemented in a way that provides regulated access for adults while simultaneously limiting youth access, discouraging misuse, and not compromising public safety. And that's from NORML's deputy director Paul Armanetto said in a statement on Monday, and that's he's out of the U.S.
The drug legalization activist nonprofit said on Monday that data from the U.S. has shown no increase in rates of problematic cannabis use after states legalized cannabis, especially among youth. A separate analysis examining the impacts of Canada's cannabis legalization law found no rise in cannabis-induced psychosis, car crashes, other injuries, or emergency room visits due to intoxication. Studies also found a growing share of users obtain cannabis legally and stable use among young adults aged 16 to 25. In sum, the evidence from the US and Canada suggests legalizing cannabis has not led to a surge in harmful cannabis use or negative health and social outcomes, particularly in young people. Consumption patterns appear largely unchanged.
There you go.
Remember they told us we're going to be on heroin if we legalize cannabis?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know, because when I got licensed, I had a family member that was quite upset because that was the concern, because that's what they were taught.
You were going to be a junkie. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And seeing is believing, right?
Yeah.
All right, Glenn, I'm going to get you started on this next story, and then I'm going to run just for a second so I can let the dog out. She's staying here letting me know. I don't know if you can hear her. So we'll get this next story going, and then I'll run up and you'll know when I'm back. All right, Here we go. The marijuana moment. States that legalize marijuana see reduced tobacco use, study finds. Back to back, fantastic, great stories, Glenn. Go ahead.
While some public health experts have expressed concern about the legalization of cannabis could fuel a rise in the use of tobacco products, a new study instead concludes that state-level cannabis reforms are mostly associated with small, occasionally significant, longer-run declines in adult tobacco use. Researchers did find consistent evidence that the adoption of state recreational cannabis laws led to a slight uptick in cannabis use among adults of between about 2 and 4 percentage points, depending on the data source, but tobacco did not follow that trend. If the apparent substitution effect from the cigarettes that's being driven by legalization were extended nationally, it could result in healthcare cost savings worth more than $10 billion per year, the study concluded.
Holy smokes. Oh, I guess no pun intended there, but $10 billion per year they're saving in healthcare costs because people are switching from tobacco to cannabis.
Yeah, and that's just the states alone, never mind the rest of the countries in the world.
Exactly. And the report goes on to say here, we find little empirical support for the hypothesis that RMLs increase the net consumption of tobacco as measured across a wide range of combustible tobacco products, as well as e-cigarettes, they wrote. Rather, the preponderance of evidence points to a small, occasionally significant, longer-run declines in adult tobacco use. Authors at Bentley, San Diego State, and Georgia State Universities published the findings in the Journal of Health Economics last month, calling the report the first to comprehensively examine the impact of recreational marijuana legalization on tobacco use. The study draws on federal data from Population Assessment of Tobacco and Health and the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Wow.
At a time in the surging public support for cannabis legalization, the researchers write, public health experts have taken a more cautious approach, using more research to assess the health benefits and cost of cannabis use, as well as to understand potentially unintended consequences on other health behaviors. some have raised concerns that reform could lead to the renormalization of smoking, potentially reversing nearly half a century of declining cigarette use. Cigarette smoking rates have fallen dramatically since the first Surgeon General's report in 1964, with rates among male adults dropping from 55% to 16%, and female smoking rates declining from 35% to 12%. While the causes of these declines are the subject of much debate, the study acknowledges most public health experts seek to preserve the health gains.
Yeah, well, maybe they could use cannabis as a way to try to get people to quit smoking. At
Yeah,
least
makes sense.
tobacco. Authors of the new study acknowledge that their analysis of the NSDUH data shows that legalization has a largely statistically insignificant 0.5 to 0.0% point decline in tobacco use, which includes tobaccos, pipe tobacco, smokeless tobacco, and cigars. However, this no effect masks small leg tobacco effects of RMLs. 3 or more years following the adoption of an RML, we find that the adult tobacco use falls by approximately 1.4 to 2.7 percentage points. So over time, Glenn, it sounds like more people are quitting.
More medicine over a longer time.
Yeah, exactly.
Look specifically at cigarette use, they continue again while the overall treatment effect is relatively small. 3 more years following the RML enactment, we find evidence of a statistically significant 1.1 to 1.3 percentage point decline in cigarette use among adults. To check the study, also analyzed states that legalized cannabis earlier than others. The results, it says, provide some support for the hypothesis that tobacco use declined in several of the earliest adopting states, most notably in Colorado and Washington, which are also those states that saw the largest increases in cannabis use following the RML enactment.
Researchers said that the reduction in tobacco use in legal states is primarily concentrated among men, and for RMLs, they are accompanied by open recreational dispensaries. Findings that they say are consistent with the hypothesis that recreational cannabis and tobacco may be substituted for some adults. The paper notes that the potential healthcare costs savings resulting from substitution away from cigarettes and towards cannabis could be substantial. $10 billion is pretty substantial to me.
That's substantial. Our estimates suggest a reduction in smoking prevalence by as many as 5.1 million, translating in tobacco-related healthcare cost savings of 10.2 billion per year. It concludes. Because most states with legal cannabis first passed medical cannabis laws, the study notes it's possible that the RML effects could be conflated with the long-run effects of MMLs, especially in the light of delays states often see between legalizing medical cannabis and actually beginning legal sales.
Analysis of the past data, meanwhile, yielded similar conclusions. Consistent with the NSDUH, we find no evidence that RML adoption significantly increased prior month combustible tobacco use or e-cigarette use, the authors wrote. While estimated lagged effects are positive in most cases for cigarette use, cigar use, and all combustible tobacco products, the effects are uniformly below a percentage point, often under 0.5 percentage points, and not statistically distinguishable from zero at conventional levels.
Further, the study found no evidence that the RML adoption significantly increases initiation of tobacco products among baseline non-users or decreases cessation among baseline tobacco users. Legalization was associated with 1.2 to 1.3 percentage point increase in joint use of tobacco and cannabis. However, which researchers said attributed primarily to cannabis initiation among the subpopulation of individuals who are already using tobacco prior to the policy shift.
According to a Gallup poll published last year, more Americans now smoke cannabis than cigarettes. A Maynooth University survey from October, meanwhile, found that most Americans believe alcohol and tobacco are more dangerous than cannabis. And a federally funded study published earlier this year found that CBD could help reduce nicotine cravings and help people quit.
And I'm one of those people that believe alcohol and tobacco are more dangerous.
Oh, so am I. So am I. There's no doubt about that. just look at the health situations behind it. Never mind everything else that can go along with it. Especially with with alcohol, when you've got collateral damage.
Yeah,
right?
bad choices. That's my problem. Bad choices.
Yeah, exactly. All right, on to the next story, which is more good news. Salem, Massachusetts ends arrest for psilocybin mushrooms. Wow, Glenn, that's good news.
It is. I'm sorry I had to move you for a second as my whole screen was covered. Salem resident and neuroscientist Mayabi Shields said, "This is a win for science and the neurodivergent community to advance life-saving research on the complex inner workings of our brains." Framed the most magical city in America, Salem just became the sixth Massachusetts city to end arrest for psilocybin mushrooms, a psychedelic the FDA has classified as a breakthrough therapy for depression after a 9-0 city council vote in support. The grassroots group behind this year's long campaign, Bay Slaters for National Medicine, has partnered with Somerville, Cambridge, Northampton, East Hampton, and Amherst to pass similar measures.
It says that our communities deserve access to these plant medicines. From parents to veterans to law enforcement, many different types of people are working through trauma with these gifts to nature. They are becoming more conscientious and compassionate versions. Come on, scroll up. Versions of themselves. It's beautiful, remarked James Davies, a co-founder at Bay Staters.
The measure and the unlikely proponent in Lucas Miller, the chief police for the city, who endorsed the measure before the city's final vote, the indications that psilocybin could be helpful for opiate addiction is something that should not be ignored. We lose about 20 people in Salem a year to opioid overdose. But Staters has entered, or Bay Staters has entered the overdose crisis in advocating for state legislation, including an act relative to plant medicine, which could legalize home growing and sharing of psilocybin and related plants. A peer-reviewed and controlled study of 44,000 Americans in the U.S. Journal of Psychopharmacology found use of psilocybin is associated with a 40% reduced risk of suffering opioid addiction. 40%.
Wow, 40% reduction. 44,000 Americans. Yeah, that's good news. There's a chart. Yeah. Disabled Marine vet Michael Bodelaw, an organizer of Bay Staters and New England Veterans for Plant Medicine, who served in combat during the Gulf War, remarked, through the VA system, I was prescribed over 100 medications, including opioids, to cope with PTSD before finding psilocybin mushrooms. For the first time in nearly 25 years, I have been able to sleep, overcome addiction to opiates, and work again. Salem resident and neuroscientist Mayabi Shields says, this is a win for science and the neurodivergent community to advance life-saving research on the complex inner workings of our brains. Wow.
Sounds like something we should have been doing a long, long time ago.
Yeah, it sure does. It's just, it's quite the, more evidence that's coming along.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go with some bad news now. We've had a good roll of good news there. And the bad news, unfortunately, is coming to the people in Florida. That is because
who'd have thought it?
Down there, according to the marijuana, or not the marijuana one, but they got you in here. It says Florida AG likely to contest upcoming cannabis ballot proposal. I think he
Florida
has.
Attorney General Ashley Moody has submitted the legalization ballot proposal being circulated by advocates to the state Supreme Court, seemingly to signal she would argue the proposal doesn't meet legal requirements to appear before voters. Florida's Attorney General on Monday submitted the proposed adult use cannabis legalization measure, to the state Supreme Court and seemingly signaled that she would argue the proposal doesn't meet legal requirements to be put on ballots. WOKV reports, in the filming, Attorney General Ashley Moody wrote that she believes the proposed amendment fails to meet the requirements and that she planned to present an additional argument through a briefing at the appropriate time. The legalization campaign, Smart and Safe Florida, has collected more than the required number of petition signatures to trigger the state Supreme Court review and is nearing the threshold required to put the issue on the 2024 ballots.
Yeah, the Supreme Court review determines whether proposed constitutional amendments are limited to single subjects or whether the proposed ballot language is clear. The proposal, the adult personal use of marijuana, would allow people 21 or older to possess, purchase, or use marijuana products and marijuana accessories for non-medical personal consumption by smoking, ingesting, or otherwise.
As of Monday, the campaign has submitted 786,747 validated signatures to get the issue on the ballot next year. According to the Florida Division of Elections website, the campaign needs at least 891,523 valid signatures to qualify for the ballots. I love this one. It's when you get close to making things legal, they change the laws, they change the rules on you so you can't. That's wonderful.
Well, yeah. Well, it's good to see that it goes through a process to make sure that it is valid before it goes to the people. Because there's been so many times where after the vote that people have been informed, they take it to court and they challenge it. At least now it's looked at before it goes to vote, which is obviously I look at it anyways better. I hate to win and then find out that they pull it because of one person vetoes it, which is because they didn't like it. That end of the law is really sucks.
I think if it makes it onto a ballot anyway, and 51% of the people vote for it, that's the law.
50.1. Yeah.
But what
exactly?
But what they'll do is they'll get really close, and then they'll change the law and say, "Oh, now you need 65%."
Yeah, that part sucks.
It's so disappointing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Glenn, it's time for a commercial break. Time to hear from those who help us inform our viewers. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Education News, paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. All right, Friday session ready. Cannabis Talk News. Oh, all right. Just thought you were gone there, and now you're back. Good stuff. Okay, here we go. First story up. Feds license university to grow psilocybin mushrooms for research.
The federal government has finally licensed a university to legally grow psilocybin magic mushrooms for the first time in over 50 years since the drug was made illegal. That such a license has been granted in the United States. The mushrooms will be grown for research purposes to investigate potential mental health benefits of the psychedelic substance. The Drug Enforcement Administration issued a license to Ohio State University in Columbus, along with its research partner, Interstate Incorporated, a mental health and wellness research and development company, as the Columbus Dispatch reported on May 10th. This permits the university to grow whole mushrooms containing psilocybin as well as other compounds of interest. Wonder what they are.
Yeah, it's not yet known precisely what the research will focus on, though May 12th press release offered some clues. By combining cutting-edge techniques in genomics and metabolomics, blew those two, we have the opportunity to obtain a high-resolution picture of the chemical diversity of mushrooms that have remained difficult to study for several decades, says Ohio State researchers Dr. Jason Slott and Dr. Kwosan Jong. They say that we believe that there is more to discover in psilocybin mushrooms than just psilocybin, added Interstate CEO Ashley Walsh. The whole mushroom is reported to have multi-dimensional healing properties that help people to cure mental health issues, relieve pain, as well as improve the quality of palliative care for cancer.
Since 1970, psilocybin has been classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Because of this prohibition, scientific research into psilocybin has been heavily restricted, even more than is the case with cannabis. Researchers have struggled for years to have the DEA license more research cannabis growers. Until 2022, the single approved institute was the University of Mississippi, and researchers took the DEA to court after complaining about the poor quality of crops out of old Mississippi.
I remember. In order to legally possess and study one of these drugs, an institution needs a DEA-approved Schedule I license holder. If the license is lost at any point, that immediately kills any related research project, a situation that occurred at the University of Connecticut, which was forced to shut down a pioneering MDA for PTSD study in 2018.
Licensing psilocybin growers can address a need for researchers to have a reliable source. 2 ongoing clinical trials are currently investigating psilocybin for depression, with Compass Pathways studying treatment-resistant depression in phase 3, and Usona Institute studying major depressive disorder in phase 2. But where researchers can actually get psilocybin has been a problem. According to courts, the Compass assigned an executive manufacturing agreement with Onyx Scientific, a company based in the United Kingdom, to produce research-grade psilocybin for their trials, which prevented Usona from getting the drug when it was ready to begin its own research. Usona then developed a new way to synthesize psilocybin and published it for free.
There you go. The synthetic, unfortunately, it is synthetic. They say, but synthetic psilocybin lacks the other compounds found in naturally occurring fungi. These may include, for example, psilocin, Basin. No, there's just some words there that I can't even think about even pronouncing.
I'm glad you got that one.
It's
Holy
like,
smoke.
think of it as like cannabis. Everybody thinks THC, but there's so much more to it. And the mushroom is the same thing.
It's natural.
Yeah, relatively. Relatedly, Ohio State research will focus on the entourage effect, a popular, if sometimes controversial, concept in the cannabis field. The idea is simple. The cannabis plant contains hundreds of cannabinoids, including THC and CBD, and many other terpenes of aromatic compounds. They possess interaction of each unique combination of cannabinoids theoretically allows consumers to customize their own experiences thanks to countless available strains, each with their own cannabinoid and terpene profile.
The entourage effect concept is more than just scientific. It's also political. Although we now have FDA-approved prescription THC, Marinol and Nabilone, and CBD Epidiolex, these drugs, which may be extracted or wholly synthetic, in the case of Marinol, don't contain the full ranges of compounds that you'll find in plants. The entourage effect has definitely been important in cannabis policy reform. Morgan Fox, political director of NORML, told Filter, for activists, it's part of the justification for major reforms, including the rights to grow cannabis at home, to consume cannabis without a doctor's prescription, and to access whole plant and flower forms, not just cannabis in a pill.
Yes, exactly. For many years after Marinol was approved, and when many states were exploring other CBD only low THC or isolated cannabinoid medical programs, which we and other advocates do not consider effective, Fox continued, arguing for the value of the entourage effect was a key point in expanding access and moving to where not only people access more complex plant medicines, but also facilitating additional research. Fox says that pharmaceutical cannabinoid drugs were never significant to meet consumers and patient needs, and that in the case of Marinol, people found it difficult to dose carefully and experienced unpleasant side effects. Glenn, that doesn't sound like any real plant medicine with that.
No, and I heard so many stories about Marinol, and none of them were positive.
No.
What's more, these prescription-only pharmaceutical drugs shut out many lower-income patients who don't have health insurance. Marinol is very expensive, and many doctors who are unfamiliar with the endocannabinoid system are loath to prescribe it, and others are not interested in prescribing it because it has negative side effects. It's relatively narrow efficacy, Fox said. The DEA's licensing of Ohio State University as a psilocybin grower is certainly a sign that the Prohibition federal agency is beginning to soften its stance on psychedelic research. But for the scientific potential of this to be realized, we need to see more institutions licensed to grow psilocybin and sell it to other researchers. If not, the university could become another Ole Miss, handed a monopoly over research psilocybin to the detriment of advancing science and human benefits.
Well, let's hope that it doesn't become what happened with cannabis, where up until 2022, so for like 50 some odd years or whatever it was only grown in one place. So hopefully, if they're growing it, if they're going to allow people to grow this at this university, hopefully they allow it to be grown at other locations as well.
People's homes.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah, well, that would be nice too, eh?
Yeah.
All right. You know what time it is? It's time to let the dog in time. So I'm gonna get you started because I can hear her scratching at the door up there. So we'll get started here. Lobbyist pleads guilty to federal bribery charges in the Michigan medical cannabis scheme. Wow, I thought they were supposed to be taking that out of the criminal element, and it just seems like it's right into it again. So,
it always worms its way in there somehow.
There you go.
A second lobbyist last week pleaded guilty in the bribery scheme involving the former head of the Michigan Medical Cannabis Licensing Board. The Detroit Free Press reports. Brian Pierce pleaded guilty to a federal conspiracy to commit bribery charge for his role in funneling $42,000 of bribes the former Michigan Medical Cannabis Licensing Agency chairman, Rick Johnson. Johnson, a Republican, is also former Michigan House Speaker. Johnson pled guilty last month to accepting $110,000 in bribes in exchange for industry licenses. David Dawood Dalali last month also pled guilty to his role in the scheme, admitting that he had hired Johnson's wife, Jan Johnson, as a consultant for $4,000 a month, and she helped him fill out forms that would end up in front of the board that her husband chaired. Bailey also admitted to providing at least $68,200 in cash and other benefits to Johnson, including 2 private flights to Canada.
Oh, wow. Businessman Vincent Brown also pleaded guilty in the scheme. Pierce faces up to 5 years in prison and a potential fine of $250,000. Federal prosecutors have agreed to consider motioning for a sentencing guideline reduction for Pierce in exchange for his cooperation.
The U.S. Supreme Court has this exact same thing going on right now, and nobody's being charged with nothing.
Yeah. There you go. That's the end of that story. Okay. On to the next one. And I'll get you started because I'm playing musical doors with the dogs today. Yeah, it's that time, eh? It's walk time, right? So they're ready to go. All right. This one's coming to us from the Fresh Toast. Headline says Schumer tosses a little hope towards the marijuana industry.
U.S. Senator Cory Booker, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Senator Ron Wyden give hope to the beleaguered cannabis industry again. Here we go again. U.S. Senator Cory Booker, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Senator Ron Wyden, chair of the Senate Finance Committee, made a joint statement supporting the Safe Banking Act. Legalizing cannabis nationwide could create at least $132 billion in tax revenue and more than 1 million new jobs across the United States in the next decade, according to some estimates. It seems a much better idea than minting $1 trillion coin. The Safe Banking Act passed the House 7 times by the Senate. This has repeatedly given hope to the industry and hinted that where the concept of federal legalization stands. Wow.
Been before the 9 times. All right. The statement says we were encouraged to see the Safe Banking Act reintroduced last week after Senators Daines and Senator Merkley worked to make key improvements to the legislation. These improvements include extension of the safe harbor to community development financial institutions and minority depository institutions to ensure that small and minority-owned businesses can access the capital they need to start and maintain successful cannabis-related businesses, and giving people with income from legal cannabis businesses access to federally backed mortgages. We look forward to watching this legislation pass through the Banking Committee and working with bipartisan partners to include additional improvements, such as harnessing by pursuing Expungement Act, which is HOPE Act, which would support states that want to expunge cannabis records with grants.
And Senator Pat Murray, who's a Democrat from Washington, is the champion of the bill, and her webpage gives a clear idea of what the bill does and who are the backers. The Safe Banking Act 2023 would prevent federal banking regulators from prohibiting, penalizing, or discouraging a bank from providing financial services to a legitimate state-sanctioned and regulated cannabis business, or an associated business such as a lawyer or landlord providing services to a legal cannabis business. Terminating or limiting a bank's federal deposit insurance primarily because the bank is providing services to a state-sanctioned cannabis business or associated business. Recommending or incentivizing a bank to halt or downgrade providing any kind of banking services to their businesses, or taking any actions on a loan to an owner or operator of cannabis-related business.
This legislation would also create a safe harbor from criminal prosecution and liability and access forfeiture for banks and their officers and employees who provide financial services to legitimate state-sanctioned cannabis businesses, while maintaining banks' rights to choose not to offer these services. The bill would also provide protections for hemp and hemp-derived cannabinoid cannabis CBD related businesses. This legislation, for the first time, explicitly extends the safe harbor to community development financial institutions and minority dispository institutions to ensure that they can also serve cannabis businesses. CDFI and MDI serve underserved communities who face challenges in accessing capital and provide affordable access to financial services.
The Safe Banking Act would require banks to comply with current financial crimes enforcement network guidance, while at the same time allowing FinCEN guidance to be streamlined over time as states and the federal government adapt to legalize medicinal and recreational cannabis policies. The current legislation is co-sponsored by U.S. Senators Jackie Rosen, Bill Cassidy. There's
That's
a whole
a
list.
long list. That's a long list. Yeah, I don't read them all.
You don't want to
That's
hear
a long list.
all those names.
Yeah. Some cannabis stocks rose by double-digit percentages on the announcement and the bipartisan nature of the Safe Banking Act's reintroduction again appeared to boost hopes of more relief to come in the industry. And after failing 7 times, you wonder what Vegas places the odds on passing. What do you think?
I can't see it. It's not going to.
I know. That's what I said. Here it is before them for the 8th time. Like, come on.
It seems anything that makes sense.
Like, why
doesn't.
Businesses are being forced to deal with millions of dollars.
Yeah, and
cash.
they're getting robbed in there because they have to deal in cash. It's just a bad situation all around.
Oh, big time. Exactly. All right. On to our last story of the day. This comes to us from MJ Biz Daily. Cannabis rebrands aim to differentiate retail, not alienate shoppers.
A push toward familiarity and comfort is in, while cannabis shops that resemble the Apple Store appear to be on the way out. Taking a page from contemporary retailers, grocers, and restaurants, cannabis companies are overhauling their store interiors to simplify and accelerate transactions using tablet ordering stations, digital signage and menus, and designated queues for online orders.
Some dispensary rebrands, including dozens of stores converging under the umbrella of Miami-based multi-state operator Air Wellness, are intended to align retail outlets under one banner, look, and feel. Others, such as Flower Shop in Arizona, sparked wholesale design changes to reflect product innovations, including the introduction of new house brands and stock keeping units or SKUs for women.
If one element can summarize the recent swing of industry makeovers, a sense of do no harm related to the shopping and customer experience is near the top. We're trying to make the experience a lot more personable and less transactional, said Todd Grobstein, Vice President of Marketing at the Flower Shop, which is rebranding a dispensary in Central Phoenix.
The company, which operates 3 retail outlets in the Phoenix area, is tying the rebrand to 4 recent brand launches, one in the beverage space, another targeting women's wellness, and 2 house flower brands. Part of the changeover included adding arcade claw machines at each store, which is right on brand in the desert metropolis known for hospitality and entertainment, including 24-hour cannabis sales.
Buyers of in-house Shorties products get a token to play the crane game, which offers a chance to grab store merchandise and smaller promotional items such as stickers and lighters. 2,250 square foot cannabis retail space, which is set to conclude renovations in early June, will incorporate digital displays and tablet ordering stations, as well as brass fixtures, warm woods, and forest green color palettes used in existing flower shop branding, locations, and logos.
Now, according to Grobstein, who's a former clothing brand executive, he told MJ Bays Daily that the way that we're designing our new locations is to make them shoppable, just like any other retail experience. Enhancing familiarity without disrupting the shopping experience led executives at Show Me Organics, which has retail stores, brands, and manufacturing under its banner, to rebrand one of the company's 2 dispensaries in rural Missouri near the Ozarks.
Its Carthage location, which will occupy a nearby property after renovations conclude in the fourth quarter, is housed in a former dairy barn and resembles a pharmacy and local hardware store. The pharmacy hardware aesthetic that helped define the brand in the small town, serving as a gathering post for a wide spectrum of consumers who discuss their buds of choice, according to the Chief Marketing Officer, Tony Billmeyer.
But the existing retail space is only 2,600 square feet, limiting business opportunities. The rebrand location will total 4,800 square feet, also ushered in a name change to Blue Sage Cannabis Deli to better reflect the company's retail strategy and design.
Deli-style cannabis retail is more informal, typically featuring products neatly lined up in rows in glass cases. Bud tenders recommend to serve up products after chatting with customers. The design is a contrast to other rural dispensaries which lean towards luxury and are often the posher properties in small towns, according to Bill Meyer. All of our competition is really trying to create comfortability through luxury, he said.
In many ways, the Blue Sage rebrand is replicating what worked at the original location. Bill Meyer adds that I think we've actually cracked the comfortability thing by just being a normal shopping experience that everyone else who comes to our stores is used to.
The goal of making a comfortable shopping environment by doing it through familiarity rather than luxury, that's what led us to analyze what made us different, which was that this corner store vibe, and we sell our flower deli style. The changeover even included buying the domain cannabisdeli.com, which leads visitors to the lounge page of the Blue Sage Cannabis.
Yeah, everybody, all that posh stuff costs money, which
I don't like those stores. I like just a normal store, like you're walking into a house. That's what I like.
Yeah. Air's Wellness is effect in May, that includes 60 medical marijuana dispensaries in Florida. The plans include about 30 stores that Air acquired in 2021 as part of a $290 million all-stock purchase of MMJ operator Liberty Health Services.
The rebrand effectively started more than a year ago when Air sought to improve product quality, menus, and customers' in-store experience. Air, which operates dispensaries in 6 states, wants its adult use customers and medical patients to recognize its brand and feel comfortable walking into the company's stores.
Air also wants locations to reflect the local market and cultural connections, whether that's through the agriculture of the space, local partnership with artists, or other community ties, according to CEO David Gobert. He says, we want to bring the Air experience to the Air environment, but at the same time, do it in a way that is very careful of not disappointing our customers by changing something that they are familiar with. We have to figure out what's best in each market.
Florida-based Juicy Holdings has been rebranding retail acquisitions under its Beyond Hello brand since 2019, when the multi-state operator acquired 2 Pennsylvania stores under that name and 10 other retail licenses in the state with a $63 million deal with Franklin Bioscience. The Beyond Hello name, which nearly every other feature of the company's retail business, has workshopped and researched through focus groups, surveys, and business intelligence and customer interactions.
The same research informed its color schemes, fonts, lighting, and in-store experience. The company leverages its 50,000 member loyalty program for instant feedback, sending shoppers inquiries via text or email about the product development, color schemes, interior and exterior designs, as well as other shopping experiences. Chief Creative Officer Andres Newman says, on the logo, we changed the colors to this trustworthy, upbeat blue and yellow and orange.
Orange is also the color of purchase icons on Juicy's website, like Amazon, because that's the color people click most on. All this science goes into that stuff. Applying it to the real world is key. Juicy has rebranded 8 of 32 planned retail locations across California, Illinois, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia.
Yeah, but not all acquisition and Juicy's roll-up strategy is rebranded. The company has opted to keep the name and design of 2 New Leaf outlets in Las Vegas. The bistro look of New Leaf stores is popular among consumers who can view buds in glass jars.
It also has good name recognition on the market, particularly among older shoppers. Some 85% of the products sold at the locations are New Leaf Health brands as well. There's no intention to change a winning formula, Newman said.
And there you go. So yeah, a lot of companies changing the way that they're doing things and the way the decors are. And it's good to see that one place is actually sending out messages to people who, hopefully they're accepting the messages as far as, they're not just forcing them on people. Getting the feedback and like that orange. Most people picked orange, so they put the
I never
orange
knew
in
that.
there. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's good. All right. You got a minute or two. And so that's about it as far as the news. We did 9 stories. We probably might have been able to squeeze a short 10th one in there, but we don't have 10 stories. So anything you want to say before we head her out?
Pura Vida. That means
all
pure
right.
life.
Yes, exactly. All right, from the Legacy420.com news desk. That's the news for today. We hope you found it educational and informative. And those first stories, I'm just so glad that they were available. I'm going to share them around. I know that. That's for sure.
There are some out there.
Yeah. Thanks to Legacy 420, Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, and to you, our viewers. Catch our next Psychedelics and Cannabis educational news broadcast with Kelly and myself Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. See you all then. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBGTV broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.